there's BLM riots going on. A gentleman approached him. His name was Garrett Foster. He had an AK-47 rifle, and he's approaching Perry, who's in his car, and Perry perceives that this man is coming with the rifle to do him harm. So he shoots him. And what the prosecutor said was Perry could have just driven off, okay, and brought witnesses forward who said the man never raised his rifle. All right, so let me just say this. I think, first of all, cities are going to have to, I don't expect that these big cities will do it, but cities are going to have to crack down on these quote-unquote protests that are nothing more than riots and opportunities for looting. It's one thing to be able to peacefully protest, which is what the Constitution allows, all right? But when you have a riot situation, bad things are going to happen. And apparently Perry thought, with all the rioting that was going on, this man walking towards him, you don't take off in your car when a man's got an AK-47. If he intends to shoot you, he'll shoot you dead before you can get 10 feet away. And I don't know that the guy has to, even if it's true that he didn't raise the weapon to fire, you don't want to wait till someone raises the gun to fire. He's approaching in a riot situation with a weapon. That's a bad situation to be in for everyone involved.
A couple of things. I thought these liberals were for gun control. So what's a BLM?
That's convenient.
What's a BLM activist carrying around a weapon at a rally or a riot for?
What was the young man in Wisconsin? Remember?
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah, Rittenhouse. The whole thing that the left was saying was he should never have been there in that circumstance with a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now you have a left-wing, Soros-funded district attorney who apparently thinks it's okay as long as you're on the BLM side.
Let me ask you this, Fred. For those who don't know, I know 90% of the people listening do know, we keep hearing the expression by people who are conservative, Soros-funded district attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
We heard that about the New York Manhattan one, Bragg, and others.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It means that these prosecutors are elected and they are getting help from George Soros, who's a multi-billionaire leftist, and he pumps money into their election campaigns.
Why?
He finds out.
Why does he care about district attorney races?
He cares about, because district attorneys, Alvin Bragg in New York, very powerful, these district attorneys, they decide many times, we have cases in St. Louis right now. Gardner is the prosecutor there, a Soros-funded prosecutor. She's in trouble right now because they have these policies of really kind of letting bad people go early or reducing.
Why would you want to do that? In the name of what?
In the name of, it has to do with
social justice, right?
Social justice. It has to do with equity in the judicial system. They talk about that a lot. In other words, in a given city, which may have a population of 15% black people, then they argue that only 15% of the people in jail should be black, according to the demographic. If it's more than that, then they say, oh, there's racism in the judicial system. We need to get prosecutors in here that are going to take that into account.
And the reason that George Soros, since 2015, 2016, has been pouring money into these races is because they do not believe that state legislatures care about this injustice. So what he did, and it's actually a pretty shrewd strategy, is we're going to circumvent the legislature, we're going to circumvent Congress, and we're going directly to the one spot that makes decisions about who they're going to prosecute. That's the district attorney's office. And since 2016, George Soros has funneled $40 million into these campaigns. And one estimate that I'm looking at now says that 20% of Americans are now living under district attorneys funded by George Soros money. And the reason his money is, you say, well, if it's only $40 million, that's not much. Okay, well, think about this. The amount of money that's spent on congressional races, presidential races, statewide governor's races is really high. But nobody pays much attention to district attorney races. You don't have to spend a lot of money to win the race. Several waves of ads are probably enough to get name recognition to get these people elected. It's a very shrewd strategy on the part of Soros. He believes he's fighting against injustice, and what we're seeing is that these district attorneys are making decisions about who to prosecute, and they are deciding not to prosecute people of color when they are arrested and charged with a crime.
Or they downgrade their charges.
Yes.
Yes.
Or they plea bargain, whatever.
And also they go after, I mentioned the St. Louis Circuit Attorney, Kimberly Gardner. Remember what she did to the couple that went over their front lawn? They had guns in their hands. They were protecting themselves.
Yes.
They lived in a closed community.
Right.
There were rioters coming down their street.
Yes, I remember that.
They stood on the lawn.
Right.
Just to show these people that we have weapons to defend
We'll
ourselves.
defend our house.
They never shot anybody.
Right.
They did not.
They were arrested, and it wasn't wise. It is illegal to brandish a gun at someone. That is illegal. And when you take a concealed carry course to get your license, they do warn you against that. However, under the circumstances, I think they should not have been prosecuted because you have rioters coming down the street, and you're letting
Into a gated community.
and you're saying, don't come to our house, we'll defend it.
Yes.
As far as I saw that video clip of what was that couple's name? It'll come to me, but they did brandish, but they didn't point their weapon at anybody. But so back to my original question. So George Soros, this international billionaire, Hungarian,
McCloskey's.
McCloskey,
The
yes.
McCloskeys.
Okay, but he's also American. And by the way, did you see where his son has access to all the Democrat leaders? Basically can visit them at the White House whenever he wants.
Yeah.
Because he's a top donor to the Democrat Party. But so George Soros is funding these district attorneys, as you say, very shrewd. If you want to have a policy impact, you're not really. Yeah, I'm sure he funds governors and presidential candidates and such, but to fund them, really. But now these people still have to be elected by the citizens of the area, and we're talking about big cities, basically, folks. So what's happened is, in some places, his people that he funded and got elected, like in San Francisco, that person has been recalled.
Yes. So bad.
So bad, even liberal San Francisco recalled him.
Right.
Yes.
And quite frankly, this harms. This harms the people that live in the big cities, even though in many cases they vote for it, right? Because what's happening is these district attorneys are turnstile the criminals.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So they're letting these violent criminals back out on the street with a very, very little punishment, if any. They don't have to post bail.
Nope.
And so you get what you have now in these American big cities, which is absolute out of control violence and robberies and carjackings and murders because of the not punishing the criminals, not putting them away.
Yeah.
In the name of social justice.
Yes. And
Right.
in the case of Alvin Bragg, there in New York,
Right.
which has become a household name because of what he did to Donald Trump last week. But Alvin Bragg has a history of letting people with a rap sheet a mile long go. and they commit more crimes. Remember, Alvin Bragg is the prosecutor who went after the bodega owner
Yes.
Yeah.
who defended himself
Right.
against a weapon-carrying...
Right. He was going to charge him with murder.
Yes, he was going to charge him with murder.
It's a very warped way of looking at the world.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, I would say still, bottom line is it's on the people who live in these communities, in these cities, who vote these people in. Yes, he gets money from George Soros, but they still vote him in. And the people of Chicago just voted in. They just voted out Lori Lightfoot, the mayor there. And now they voted in somebody who has as far left of views as she did, or worse.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, what's the old saying? You keep doing the same thing over and over and expect different results.
It's insanity.
Huh? What's going to happen is the businesses are going to leave these cities. These cities are going to be left without any tax base. People are going to move they've already moved from the cities to the suburbs. They're going to move from the suburbs to the country to get away from the out of control crime. And I do think this is a net loss for the Democrat Party as a whole, going into the next election cycle. Although, you might argue, well, no, I don't think so, Tim, because look in Chicago, they don't care.
Well, this one expert who's written a book about George Soros, Matt Palumbo, he says that Soros had a 90% success rate in getting these district attorneys elected. That's a pretty good batting average, because people generally do not pay attention to district attorney races.
Right. But in these big cities, they keep voting. I don't mean to sound unsympathetic, but they keep voting for this.
Mm-hmm.
And it is hard to, when you want to say you can do something by voting differently, and they say, no, we want to keep doing the same thing. It's hard to feel sorry for people who think like that. We'll be back momentarily. Stay with us.
What does the American Family Association stand for? We believe true morality flows from biblical principles and directs people to the manner in which God intends them to live. These values and more are part of our mission to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. We also support the church. We want to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. Thank you for standing with us as we seek to stop the erosion of godly values.
We live in a day when America's families are under attack like never before. Buddy Smith, Senior Vice President of the American Family Association. The war against biblical principles rages on numerous fronts. The internet, Hollywood, Washington, D.C., America's corporate boardrooms, and the list goes on. At American Family Association, we're committed to standing against the enemies of God, the enemies of your family. And we recognize it's an impossible task without God's favor and your partnership. Thank you for being faithful to pray for this ministry, to give financially, and to respond to our calls for activism. What you do on the home front is crucial to what we do on the battlefront. We praise God for your faithfulness, and may He give us many victories in the battles ahead as we work together to restore our nation's biblical foundations.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes. Stand by for news and commentary next.
My goal as a teacher is to impart knowledge and then be able then for them to take it and turn it into wisdom. As we teach, I think, okay, 5 years down the road, how will the material that I am teaching them really affect their lives and their careers?
Hi, Todd Starnes here. Truett offers biblically centered degree programs. Check out truett.edu/Starnes. Bad news for connoisseurs of fried chicken and biscuits in Portland, Oregon. Cracker Barrel just announced they're closing all of their restaurants in that part of the country. Portland, a once beautiful and vibrant city, turned into a desolate, crime-infested wasteland. Progressive Democrats have allowed anarchists to pretty much control the streets, basically modern-day warlords. Cracker Barrel blamed the closures on the China virus, but I'm not so sure. Walmart recently announced they too are closing all of their Portland area stores. They blame the closings on crime. The Walmart CEO said record-breaking retail theft was hurting the company's bottom line. And small companies too are facing closures. So my recommendation to the good people of Portland, Oregon is to order a cast iron skillet. It's the only proper way to fry chicken, and it's also useful in fighting off the anarchist. Be sure to get a copy of my book, Culture Jihad. It's available at toddstarnes.com or your favorite bookstore.
However, as it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love him. 1 Corinthians 2:9.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Welcome back to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. Yeah, if folks want to watch or send us a message, how can they do that?
Well, comments at afr.net, comments at afr.net if they want to send a constructive comment.
Got to be a Caleb email.
That's what we
Positive and encouraging.
We prefer that.
Yes, positive and encouraging people.
If you want to watch us, folks, you have two options. You can go to Facebook and search for today's issues and click through. You can watch the live video stream of this program. I'm waving to those of you who are watching right now. Or you can go to our streaming platform, streaming.afa.net. Streaming.afa.net, and you can watch us there.
Listen, folks, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, we're going to have Share-a-thon here on American Family Radio. It's an exciting time for us. We do twice a year, 3 days in the spring, 3 days in the fall. And we'll have a lot of guests and a lot of, again, it'll be a very exciting time for us as we ask our listeners to financially support the ministry. And you always come through. Folks have always come through over the years. We've been around since 1991, American Family Radio, if you can believe that. And so we ask that you pray for our Share-a-thon because we want to keep, I say, American Family Radio, we want to keep going and growing.
Yes.
And we are expanding our territory because we're picking up listeners by the thousands monthly especially on our app.
Right.
Our AFR app and on our radio network. So we encourage you to pray for us and please be as generous as you can with a donation or donations during our American Family Radio Share-a-thon. Again, that's going to start 6 a.m. Central Time tomorrow and then go through Thursday. One other, I was thinking about, we were talking about what happened in Texas. What's the fellow's name who?
Sergeant Daniel Perry.
Okay, and Governor Abbott has said he's going to pardon him.
Work hard to pardon him. Yes.
He was convicted of murder.
Yes.
And the governor's saying, no, it was absolutely self-defense, and I will pardon him. And, of course, he has to go through the parole board, as we mentioned earlier before. But you said the prosecutor in the case said that he should have driven off while he...
That's the argument that was made. I'm looking at an NPR story.
He was an Uber driver, right?
Yes.
An Uber driver. You know what I just thought about here? If he had, quote, driven off, the guy's coming at you with a gun.
An AK-47.
AK-47 in a riot. It was a BLM riot, protest. Your life's threatened. You have good reason to believe that. You shoot to defend yourself against a real and perceived threat, perceived and real. Can you have a real threat? And next thing you know, well, not the next thing you know, after a trial, you're convicted of murder. And so I just thought, well, if he would have, quote, driven off, let's say, you ever try to think rationally and control a vehicle when you're in a panic mode? If he'd have tried to drive off and then ran over a few of these protesters,
right,
then he would have been nailed for murder, homicide, because he ran over BLM protesters.
Right.
You know?
So those situations are, I've never been in one, but I've seen plenty of video footage where a car takes the wrong turn or whatever and winds up on a street with people, and they're approaching your car, they're shouting, they're screaming,
Right.
banging on the windows or whatever. That's got to be terrifying. And you can't just hit the accelerator because you're surrounded by people. And
Right.
listen, that's why I said these should be peaceful protests. They should be monitored by police. And when people get out of line, because the Constitution allows for a peaceful redress of grievances. All right. It says peaceful in the Constitution. So that's the way these kinds of protests should be monitored by the police. And when things get out of hand, you shut it down. And because nothing good comes out of those kinds of confrontational behaviors. When a person like Sergeant Perry, Army Sergeant Perry, is in a vehicle and he's being approached, and a guy comes with a rifle towards him, he doesn't know if that guy lifts that weapon up 6 inches, he's dead. This man Perry wanted to go home to his family. So bad things happen when you let emotions get out of hand, and to some extent, this falls on the police in Austin for not controlling the riot.
Yeah. Next story, Fred.
Well, it was 2 weeks ago today when that tragic shooting occurred at the Christian school in the Nashville area. The shooter, we were just learning a little bit more from police. Audrey Hale, 28-year-old former student at the school, she delivered about 150 rounds that ended up killing those 3 precious children and 3 adults who worked at that school. Almost immediately, the phrase gun violence came into play from the left. It was gun violence, gun violence, gun violence. That led to a protest at the Tennessee legislature last week. What happened during the protest is that 3 elected Democrats, took control of a legislative session. They got a bullhorn out and they were shouting support to all the protesters who were in the gallery and who were trying to get in. You may have seen video. Police officers who were trying to guard the legislative well, as they call it, were being pushed by these students. But these 3 Democrats, as I say, took control of the legislative session. Late last week, these 3 or 2 of them, were voted to be expelled for their activity. There were 3 Democrats. One of the Democrats apparently didn't take the bullhorn. She was not believed to have gone to the extent that the other 2. The other 2 are legislators. I believe one from Knoxville, one from
Memphis. Nashville and Memphis, I think.
Nashville and Memphis, you're right. The third one was from Knoxville. So the 2 of them vote to be expelled. Well, on the weekend, Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, goes to Nashville. She is angry, upset, screaming and hollering. She's at a meeting there, and she is saying this never should have happened to these 2. They should never have been expelled, and the fact that they were expelled, are you ready for this, is a threat to democracy, despite the fact that they took over. I want to play you a little bit. This is Kamala Harris over the weekend defending these people. Cut number 6.
But they understood that the voices must be heard. So think about this. In order to make sure the voices were represented in that place where elected leaders are supposed to lead in a democracy, these leaders have to get a bullhorn. They have to get a bullhorn to be heard. Well, you know what? That happens in a democracy too. That happens in a democracy too.
Now,
Have to get a bullhorn.
To be heard.
Again, just to be clear, what we're talking about here is those 3 people you mentioned who are state legislators in Tennessee.
Correct.
They were expelled.
Yes.
No, 2 of them were expelled. One of them, I guess, was censured or disciplined. It wasn't a matter of what they were saying, because there's a process for that. And it wasn't a matter of 2 of the 3 of them were black. One of them was a white lady. 2 of them were black men. Because if they were expelling people because of their skin color, there's a whole bunch of other state legislators in Tennessee who are African American who were not expelled. So it's not a racism situation, okay, or a sexism situation. They were expelled because you can't conduct state business with people storming into the Capitol building and using and one of the legislators using a bullhorn inside the room.
Yes.
It was a matter of violating decorum and protocols, I guess you could say. It wasn't a matter of what they were saying, like Kamala Harris there, the vice president, is trying to say. I don't know where she was speaking right there.
I think it's Fisk. Is it Fisk University?
Fisk University?
Yes.
Fisk University. Okay. So, and she said they, quote, have to get a bullhorn to be heard. No, they don't. No, they don't. They don't have to get a bullhorn. You're wrong about that. The other thing was, she didn't make an offer, as far as we know, to visit the families or say anything about the families of the 6 families who were victims of the trans shooter, the shooter who identified as a what am I trying to say?
She identified as a trans man.
It was a girl who thinks she was a boy, and she's the one who did the shooting.
Yes.
At the Covenant School.
They killed those people at the Christian school in Nashville. So she didn't offer. So she's going there. She can go to Nashville. Couldn't go a few days earlier to offer to meet with the families. That people are just pointing that out.
Well, and the utter hypocrisy of this, because the Biden administration, Kamala Harris is the vice president, I don't remember her coming out in defense of parents in Loudoun County, Virginia, who went to school board meetings, and they shouted, and they said they were upset with the left-wing curriculum that their kids were being taught, not to mention the fact that the school board was allowing boys who said they were girls to go into girls' washrooms. In fact, Kamala Harris's attorney general, Biden's attorney general, wrote a letter Merrick Garland wrote a letter calling these parents who were upset terrorists. Did Kamala Harris come to the rescue of those?
No, it's all about pandering.
And I want to stress, too, these Democrat legislators there in Nashville could have gone to the Speaker of the House and said, we want to raise a concern. They didn't do that. They took over a legislative session.
They had to call recess.
Yes. They took over a legislative session that was dealing with something else entirely. Some people are saying, wait a minute, I think that's called insurrection.
Yeah, what did Kamala Harris, what if you applied her standard and said, the people who went into the Capitol on January 6th, they had to be heard.
Right.
Yes.
Huh?
It's a democracy.
It's a democracy, and the only way they could be heard was to storm the Capitol building.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could make by going on her argument about what happened there in the state capitol there in Nashville. You could say the same thing.
And we have been critical of what happened on January 6th.
Yeah.
So we're equally critical about what happened in Tennessee. It's not my state, but
you can't have law and order with anarchy.
Right.
You can't. You can't have law and order with anarchy, and everybody ought to be able to agree on that, left and right, Republican, Democrat. If you can't, then you got chaos, and you got a situation, a recipe for disaster across the country. If you can't agree on the rules.
If you don't have, now some people make fun of law and order people, but here's what I always say: if there is no law and order, people will take the law into their own hands. That's why you have law and order. That's why you have laws, and that's why everyone's supposed to play by the same rules. When that collapses, people take the law into their own hands, and then what you have is innocent people who get hurt.
And let's be clear. These two members of the legislature in Tennessee, they're expelled. There is a process. They're going to be back in there within a matter of months. All right? The people in January 6th, they're sitting in prison cells, for some of them for years.
Yeah,
What
this has been
happened
going
again?
on for 3 years. Some of them are still there.
Hadn't had their trial.
Haven't had their trial.
And the Constitution guarantees a speedy trial, but they're considered to be insurrectionists. And I think that the mentality of those in D.C. who are supposed to be doing the prosecuting, they're saying, well, I'm surprised they haven't shipped them to Gitmo in Cuba as terrorists. That's the way they're being treated.
Another thing that's going on here, what Kamala Harris is doing right there, I don't necessarily buy it that she believes what she's saying. Nor do I buy what that. I guess you could say, well, it doesn't really matter whether she believes it or not. She's still saying it. What she and Biden and a lot of the Democrats are doing at every opportunity, they're pandering, particularly to black folks. They're pandering. They're trying to make up racism when it isn't there. It's shameful. They're trying to fan the flames of division. This is what Al Sharpton makes a living at doing. And it doesn't help anybody at all. And they try to stoke division between white people and black people by saying these two of these legislators were black, therefore it's racism. Never considering the whole context of what we just discussed here. As I've said, if this were racism, then they would just expel all the black members across the state from the state legislature. So it wasn't that. And they've never done that before, as far as I know. Even though it was about a particular cause of action, which we talked about here before. This is like blaming is the whole gun violence thing. These Democrat politicians, a lot of them, they gaslight you. By gaslight, I mean they try to make you believe something that isn't so, and their default position is that Americans are inherently racist, particularly white Americans, and so we blame everything we can on that to try to stoke division among peoples, and it's as I say, it's shameful. Does racism exist? Yeah, we have 330 million people in America. Racism exists around the world. Always has and always will. Because why? Because men's hearts are sinful. And people hate each other and hate people for different reasons. Not just skin color. White people hate other white people for different reasons because they're a different socioeconomic, or they're a different family, or I don't know. People have all kind of crazy reasons why they have animus or hatred toward other people. But I think that's extremely rare. I think the vast majority of Americans are fair-minded folks who don't hate anybody. They just want to live their lives in peace and have law and order and be free from crime and enjoy their lives. But these lefties here, they just want to always stoke these flames of division, and it's, as I said, it's just shameful. So that's what's happening right here. That's why, Biden a few years ago, he famously or infamously said, he was speaking to a group of black leaders, and he said, they just want to put y'all back in chains. Remember that? That's that's what I'm talking about. And you could almost see him turn around and Riley smile. Riley, at somebody behind him said, they're buying this. They're buying this. By they want to put you back in chains. What he was saying, Republicans want to make y'all slaves again.
Reinstitute slavery.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff.
Or Jim Crow 2.0. Was that in Georgia?
Yes.
Remember?
Which wasn't true.
Right.
Wasn't true. Remember, that's another great example of trying to stoke division and flame the
Fan the flames.
Fan the flames of false FAUX racism charges. Biden says what Georgia did was, he said it's Jim Crow too. In other words, they're trying to make it illegal for black folks to vote.
Yes.
You guys got to see what's going on here. Well, guess what? Subsequent to that, they had 2 voting cycles, I think, in which the voting among African Americans and other people of color in Georgia was way up, and they the Democrats won the Senate. There, now they lost the governor's seat, but it was a fair election. So I'm talking about the last cycle.
Yeah, but you will hear threat to democracy. You heard Kamala Harris mention threat to democracy. That is a favorite line of the
What's a threat to democracy? What happened in Tennessee?
Yes. It's a threat to democracy that these 2 Democrats